was only a matter of time, but earlier on, Jacob Steinberg reported that David Sullivan and Tim Steidten are disagreeing on which manager to go after and which type of manager and the age profile of the manager. There's now disagreements in the boardroom once again. It was only really a matter of time before it happened, but we're here to discuss it, but not just me. I've got my friend Frankie with me today as well to get his perspective on the managerial situation regarding West Ham. But first of all, I think Frankie would tackle the big one, which is Jacob Steinberg has said that West Ham have held talks with former Wolves manager Julen Lopetegui. What's your thoughts on him?
What's my thoughts on him, mate? I think quite similar to what everybody else feels. It's not the most inspiring. It's kind of quite an obvious choice. I think there's positives. He's been around the Premier League. He knows what it takes in the Premier League. I think those things are pluses. But I just think people wanted something that was a little bit more inspiring, something that was a bit more, I don't know, something we didn't expect. And I think that's why people really went a bit crazy when Amorim sort of got mentioned. That was more, something that we didn't expect West Ham to do. This feels like quite a typical West Ham managerial appointment. It's not pulling up any trees to go and sign someone that you thought, wow, that's something that, I didn't expect. That's someone who I wouldn't have thought would come to West Ham. And we've made a big, bold statement managerial signing there. So, look, mate, I think he's a decent enough manager. I think he's all right. I think he's got Premier League experience, which counts for a lot. But is it that next level? Is it that man that we think is going to take West Ham on and kick us on and push us forward? And also, mate, I think what we have to consider here is we do feel like there's a bit of a rebuild needed. And is he a man that you think is going to come in and build from the ground up and turn West Ham into a bit of a force? And I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, if he was sort of allowed to be in control of the transfers, he might be the guy for the rebuild. But the problem is he possibly won't be the guy, because when he was at Wolves, he brought in Craig Dawson, he brought in Cunha, he's brought in good players at Wolves that's helped them stay up, and they've gone on to be key players under Gary O'Neill. But part of the reason he left was disagreements with the club regarding transfers. He felt he wasn't being sufficiently backed despite being promised money. Do you worry that he might have similar issues at West Ham? It's a different one in the sense that he doesn't have control, but just keeping the transfer market or player recruitment is a general topic. Is there any concerns there?
No, my biggest concern that I have, mate, is where Sevilla are now. He sort of took them over when they were a real European force and a European powerhouse. And last season they had their worst league finish in 20 years. And then this season they're going to finish even lower again. And when we played them, I saw, and I know people disagree with it, but I saw a massive decline in Sevilla when we played them. And they weren't the same side as what they used to be. And that tells me a little bit that when you get left, a new manager comes in, you can all blame the new manager, but sometimes certain managers are given a really difficult job to do. And I do believe that whoever takes over from West Ham right now is going to be given a really difficult job to do. I think we've got some real key marquee players in there, which is great. And any manager would love to work with the likes of Bowen and Kudus, and that's brilliant. But in terms of a squad that's got depth, and in terms of how many players who are going to go out in the next window, and how many players are going to need to be sort of replaced, and how many players are just getting a bit over the hill now as well. I think it's a massive, massive job. And I just don't see him. Yeah, okay, Craig Dawson. I mean, was that a brilliant signing? I don't know, mate.
It was for Wolves, I think. I think he played a significant part in them staying up. And I would suggest that since he's left, our defence has got a lot worse. And I've never been Dawson's biggest fan, but I have to admit that pre and post Dawson,
I think he's a perfect fit for the position that they was in. If you've got a team that are really struggling, although Dawson had a bit of a reputation of taking teams down, so maybe I'm wrong in saying that as well, because everywhere he used to go, they got relegated. So, but maybe he was the right sort of, bullish, experienced guy who's going to come in there and he's going to put his head on everything. And
can I ask you a weird question? In January, it's just passed. If you could re-sign Dawson for $1 million, would you have done it?
Oh, that's a really good question, mate. And I don't think I would. No, I don't think I would. I think sentimental value of what he did in Europe the last time, that he would get his head, that goal against Lyon away, and he got on that goal at the back post and stuff like that. I think that rung in my head a little bit this time in Europe, that you kind of still craved a little bit of that extra something, and we was missing that this time round. So I don't know, would I have signed him? I don't think I would. I don't think he was that much difference on what we had, really. Here's a question back to you, Gio.
Go on, then.
Him or Aguerd, who would have lined up with at home against Leverkusen?
Dawson.
Yeah, see, I thought that's why, and that's why you would have him, and I wouldn't, because I would have probably gone Aguerd.
I would have brought him back in because Aguerd was playing silly buggers regarding African Cup of Nations. Zuma was not in great form at that time either. Mavropanos was seeing glimpses, but he hadn't had a proper run in the team and shown what he could do. So as far as I was concerned, we almost had no centre-backs at that point. We had 4 senior ones, but there's nobody really the man, and I would have bit your hand off for Dawson back in January. But last one on Lopetegui before we discuss the battle between Steidten and Sullivan. Does the fact that Lopetegui has been sort of flirting for this job for a year now, basically as soon as he left Wolves, it's a case of he wants the West Ham job, and he's still in England, or he's been waiting in England, and you imagine he's been waiting for this West Ham job. Does that appeal to you, the fact that this guy's hungry for this position, or does it play no part in your sort of like or dislike over the potential recruitment?
It depends the motive, doesn't it, mate? Is he a man? If you were sitting there and it was I don't know, it's a terrible example, but it's the only way that I can think of putting this into the context that I need it to be, is if it's a Bilic who's sitting there waiting because he loves West Ham and it's the club that he's fond of, then you turn around and say, no, he wants to be here for all the right reasons. It's because he thinks a lot of West Ham and he's going to come in and he's going to give it his all. If it's that he's thinking it's the best job that he could potentially get, he will probably see that job as that is the pinnacle of what I could get right now. I genuinely think that West Ham, and other people will have a disagreement on that because they might not think as much of West Ham as I do. But I think we're even considering, and even if I take the facts into consideration, he's got to work with Sullivan and he's got all these other downside of things. I think managing West Ham is a massive privilege, mate. I think we've got huge amounts of history. I think we're a fantastic football club. The money that we've spent in recent times suggests that managers do get a bit of backing from the board. Yeah, okay, it's not every window. Yes, okay, it's not all the time, but I think he will be given money to spend. And looking at that crop of players, like we said, yes, it's a massive rebuild job, but to come in and think, look, I've got foundations that I can build around. I can build around Jared Bowen. I can build around Kudus. I think any manager would be licking their lips at that chance, mate. And for a club that's just come out of Europe, for a club that, and this is the other thing as well, mate. I think there's so much of this opinion at the moment that everybody says, oh, West Ham will just get on the back of the new manager when they come in. I don't buy into that narrative, mate. West Ham have always loved triers. If he's trying and he's trying to make things happen on the football pitch, we would all massively back him. If down the line we start to see that fade away and he starts being a defensive manager and he starts to, go a bit downhill, yes, we are going to get frustrated. But I do think that he would be given all of the chance in the world to come in and do that rebuild job, whoever it is, not just Lopetegui, but any manager who comes in. I think we're going to be right behind them. I think everyone's going to get right, up for it when the new season starts. I think this West Ham United job is very attractive to any manager. I think it's a massive coup for him. Amorim might have been a coup for us. This would be a coup for him. That's how I see it. I think it would be a fantastic job. And that's why I also feel like maybe I'm not totally sold on him, mate, because I think we can do better.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that, really. I'm not Lopetegui's biggest fan. I've been quite sort of pessimistic on the potential appointment over the last few days. I think he's a safe pair of hands. I don't think we're going to get relegated or anything. I think he would do all right, but I want better than all right. I want really good. I think we're in a good position. I think having a big rebuild can be a problem, but it's also a really good opportunity for the next manager and Tim Steidten as well. The fact that not quite blank canvas, but the core group of players here, you've got a strong spine to the team, the players that will be here next season. You've got quality, you've got a good goalkeeper, you've got a really good left back. there's a decent centre-back 2 or 3 in there for the right manager that can get the best out of those players. You've got Edson Alvarez, Kudus, Bowen, whether Paqueta's here or he does go, you've either got a top player, you've got 85 million, whichever one it is. The attack needs a little bit of work, but I tell you what, you've got 3 players you need to buy for the first 11. It's not that big a job. And there's a huge scope for this. I think if you're a director of football, I think surely the one thing you want is almost permission or the demand to make a lot of changes to the playing squad. As a director of football, you go and you go, could you buy 1 player this summer? Must be a bit underwhelming, but well, is that it? Like, I was hoping to get 5 or 6 in. I'm really good at my job. As a Tim Steidten right now should be licking his lips at the job on his hands in this summer. He's thinking, brilliant, this is where I can get to work and get those 3 or 4 out the door, and I can get this 5 or 6 in sorted. But speaking of Scarf Man and also the little man in the boardrooms, Sullivan versus Tim Steidten. Before we discuss that, actually, if you enjoy this podcast, please do drop a like by clicking thumbs up. It's completely free. It takes 2 seconds. Subscribe to Hammers Chat. Both things help out the channel. I'm going to be doing a bit more of these long-form podcasts going forward, but it depends on you guys. You guys like it, we'll do more. And also, Frankie may be a regular guest around here as well, so get involved in the comments below. But Frankie, Steinberg, while he said Lopetegui has had talks with the club, he has also stated that that's Sullivan's preference, and Tim Steiden's preference is Amorim, and he would prefer to go for a younger manager than Lopetegui. And they don't play the same style of football. Same formation, ironically enough, but not necessarily the same method of going about it. But what do you make of this conflict in the boardroom regarding the replacement of David Moyes?
Well, I think we've seen signs of this before, why it may not have been totally out in the open. I think actually a couple of our last transfer windows suggest that this happens more often than maybe we're realising. This could be partly why January was a complete failure, because of disagreements between whether or not who people want and so on. And it's a really frustrating place to be, mate, because at the end of the day, I think we've all got confidence in Steidten. I don't think we've got any confidence in Sullivan. And I think we all felt that when Steidten came in, then the sort of what was suggested was that he was going to have control. He was going to be the director of football. He'd bring in the players. He would find them. He would bring them in. And he's shown that he's very capable of bringing very good players to West Ham, which is great. And I always said that the reason why I don't fear losing David Moyes, like some might, is because Sullivan isn't in charge of finding us a manager this time. It will be Steidten. And if he does anything like he does with players, then I'm very happy that I can put trust in him to go and find the right man for West Ham to move forward. The fact that Sullivan seems to have wants to play football manager again and in real life like he does and wants to get involved is a worry, mate. And it's not just a worry for who we end up appointing as a manager, but it's a worry that, you know, Steidten already raised a little bit of frustration through his last interview with the German press and said, you know, it's not quite what I expected. I thought I'd have full control and it hasn't worked out that way, but I'm dealing with it and I've accepted it and that's great. Well, how long will he continue to accept that for is the biggest worry. So I do have little bits of concerns, mate, that this isn't just affecting the managerial decision, but it will affect our whole summer, which will be a real problem. So I hope that maybe it isn't 100% truth and we've just been fed something that might not be. There might have been a little bit of disagreement and there might have been a bit of back and forth, but I'm hoping that ultimately Steidten will still be the man given the control to do what he needs to do.
Yeah, there hasn't been like a statement, if you like, on the extent of the conflict, because I can't have it 2 ways here. During the season, when there was all this conflict reported between Moyes and Steidten regarding which players to buy, I always downplayed it and said, look, disagreements is healthy. I don't want Moyes saying yes to all of Steiden's players, and I don't want Steidten saying yes to all of Moyes' players. I want there to be debate. I want there to be discussion, and I want them together to identify the players and bring them in. And I felt the summer reflected almost like a healthy transfer committee where Moyes got his Ward-Prowse, we've got Alvarez and Kudus in, and we also got in, Steiden's got in his Mavropanos. And I thought overall, I felt we were one short, but the players we did bring in, I felt was almost like a healthy balance between them all. And throughout the season, Moyes has utilised all the players. It might have taken a little bit longer with Mavropanos, but come the end of the season, I think there's no doubt that Mavropanos is now our main centre-back along with Kurt Zouma. So whether we think Ward-Prowse is good or not isn't really what I'm trying to discuss here. It's whether he has been used by David Moyes. And I think all 4 players have had a very healthy amount of minutes. So it would be a successful enough transfer window. So I've tried to downplay the conflict a bit and say, look, it's healthy. It's as long as no one's resigning off the back of it, it can sometimes be a healthy thing. So the fact that Sullivan and Steidten are disagreeing, I think to some extent, if it is just that I prefer that one and I prefer that one, and that's all there is to it, it's not the end of the world. We'll interview my candidate, we'll interview your candidate, and then we'll both go away and reflect and decide what direction we want to go in. I think what concerns me is that Sullivan's getting involved at all, to be honest with you. I think the Lopetegui thing smacks of a little bit of what we would do if Tim Steidten wasn't here, but also what we would do if we were in a relegation battle or something. Because when we have employed managers in the past, Sam Allardyce, not so much Bilic, because he came in after us finishing in a comfortable bottom half of the table after Sam Allardyce, and Pellegrini came in from Bilic and Moyes in between that as well. It's almost felt like it was firefighting appointments. So it's like, who can we get that's sort of cheap and cheerful and can just do the job and keep us in the Premier League? We're not in that situation anymore. West Ham today is a hell of a lot different to the one that Moyes came into post Pellegrini. We don't need somebody to keep us up anymore. We need somebody, minimum, bad season is 10th. That's like a poor season, top half. We need somebody now that can improve the football that we're playing, that can introduce the youth players, that can start utilising the academy and play a better brand of football. The demands of recruiting the manager today is significantly different to when we reappointed David Moyes, or even when we appointed Slaven Bilic, Sam Allardyce and Manuel Pellegrini. It's hugely different. And I feel like Sullivan's adhering to the same checklist he did all those years ago. Is he free? Does he have Premier League experience? I just get frustrated. I think, just stop it. Just stop it. You do the hard part, which is admit you need a director of football. That's possibly the hardest thing Sullivan would have to do. Put his hands up and say, I'm not good enough. That's a very difficult thing to admit. So you've got Tim Steidten in, brilliant. You've made the hard decision. You've identified somebody really good. How you identified him, I still do not know, but he's at the club. And now the easy bit is almost just let him do his job. That's the easy part. And he's struggling to just let him do that. I was almost baffled last summer that Sullivan didn't get more involved. And in January comes round and there's all this talk about Osman, and it was Sullivan getting involved again. And it's almost like he stepped away for one summer and thought, that's enough. I'm getting back involved now. It's my baby. I want to start playing with it. Just stop, Sullivan. Just stop. Just back away. Let Tim Steidten do his job, because when it comes to a committee, if you like, there should be certain people there, and of course Sullivan's got to be involved to some extent. But being present and listening doesn't mean you have to be chirping in and making the decisions. Let them make the decisions, and he will get more praise from me for letting Tim Steidten do it and it works out, then he gets involved and it turns out okay. I'd credit Sullivan a lot if he just backed off and let the people employed to do a job to actually do a job, and it works. So that's my frustration. But like I said, we don't know to the extent of the conflict. That's the one thing we don't know. Is it just a small disagreement, or are they actually having fisticuffs over it and it's a real argument and butting up the heads as to what direction to go in? Because I do worry that I've never been concerned about Steidten leaving, Frankie, even though he's flirting with Liverpool. But I think that's just Liverpool. The fact, rather than leaving West Ham, it's joining Liverpool. It's two different things. But I do think this type of stuff might be just what pushes him out the door, because Moyes has been perceived as the biggest barrier to Tim Steidten. Well, if he's off, what's stopping him? If Sullivan now gets in the way, I think Steidten might be well entitled to throw his scarf in and say, do you know what? I've had it. I've tried my best. I'm handcuffed. I'm off skis. But there you go. Sorry for rambling on, but there you go. That's my my mini rant on the situation. I just don't trust Sullivan, Frankie. I just do not trust him. And whenever I hear stories like this, it just makes me get worried about the fact that I don't trust him. If that makes sense.
Mate, it makes perfect sense. I totally agree. We've got the track record. There's absolutely every reason for feeling like that, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, that I think that's what we're all worried about.
Is there anyone in particular you do want?
See, I take a very different stance to most on this, mate. I feel like as a fan, it's not really my job. And I really struggle with that question on social media when they go, well, who should it be then? Who should? No, it ain't my job. I will talk in a pub, you know, or on social media about football and about what I see. And as a fan, it's not my job to go and recruit coaches, managers, staff, anything else. I don't know. I don't know who's out there. I haven't sat there and gone through all the managers in world football to try and uncover everyone. And the perfect example I have is, for example, Postecoglou at Tottenham. And you can argue whether that's gone well or whether it hasn't and everything else. But at the end of the day, I think if somebody would have thrown his name in the ring at any point, no one would really have known who he was. Nobody would really have wanted him. And
pre-Celtic.
Pre-Celtic. Yeah. You wouldn't have known who he was. And what I'm saying is there are people out there like that that are good enough and are up and coming, you know, good managers who can come in and transform a team. And that's what I want a Tim Steidten to go and find. So it's not really down to me to pick out the typical managers that I know, that I've seen in the Premier League, that I might have seen in Europe. And we all know the Dortmund guy because he was Bilic's right-hand man and all this. But that's such a small percentage of what actually could be available to us that I always have the opinion in this example is, well, I'm not the man to do that. But I do believe we have got a man who does know the ins and outs of world football, who does know all the coaches that are out there, will have met and experienced them through other roles in football at certain times. And I fully entrust in he is the man that needs to be asked that question. And that's what Sullivan should be doing. Sullivan shouldn't be finding his targets or people he knows or, you know, certain agents that Sullivan knows getting on the phone to him and going, oh, David, I've got the man for you, blah, blah, blah. That's not what we want. What he should be doing is turning around to Steidten and going, I entrust in you, I employ you, go and find me the man who takes West Ham to the next level.
Yeah, I completely agree with every word you said, especially Steidten is so data heavy. He always has been. Bremen at Leverkusen, he's been such a big believer in data in football. And he's brought in Hans with him, who's essentially the numbers guy. I'm sure he watches football and he loves football and stuff, but he's very data. Data is what drives his recruitment. And as a manager, they will be able to identify other managers via data, via the metrics. How high do certain teams press? How attacking are they? What's their percentage? All this small things of football, which might be boring to a lot of people, and understand why people might not be interested in field tilt. I get that. I get as why a fan, you sit there and go, why do I care about XG? I get that. You don't have to explain. But for people like Steidten and Hans, who are so involved in it, they can basically at their fingertips be able to identify managers through this metrics and get a bit of a view into how they play as a manager, how their teams play football. And they'll give you an idea into the philosophy they've got. And like you said, pre-Celtic for Postecoglou, he was very successful over in Japan and Australia. It was just all relative. So when people say, oh, he's won the Australian A-League, whoop-de-doo. Yeah, but it's relative. He's won that league with players that play at the ability of this. He wasn't over there coaching Man City and winning the league. He was coaching Australian A-League players where Adam Lafondra, the former Reading striker, is almost like God over there. That guy, he's a banksman in that. That's the level of the league. So because he's won titles in other leagues and continents, doesn't mean his skills aren't transferable. Of course they are. Being a good manager, you're a good manager. You win the league in whatever country. Doesn't mean you're a bad manager just because it's a poor league. As a player, I think as a player you can go, yeah, you can do it in the Australian league, but can you do it in the Premier League? Probably not. But as a manager, well, actually, maybe, because your skills are transferable. You can still manage a team. You can still put your ideas onto the football pitch. You can still play attacking football. So players, you might not be able to go to the second division in Belgian football and buy a player and bring him over. But you could go get a manager and bring him over because he is possibly good enough at this level. We just don't know. So I'm a bit like you. There's not one outstanding candidate for me. Last season, ironically, it was Ange Postecoglou when he was at Celtic. But now I don't have that desire for somebody as much as I did for Postecoglou. And that's why I was disappointed he went to Spurs, because it was somebody I really wanted to be the next West Ham manager. I'm in a women of prayer and praying that Spurs don't get top four. Not necessarily because Spurs are doing crap. There's an element of that, but also because might just turn them on Postecoglou a little bit and say, hang on a minute, this ain't good enough. And if he becomes available, I'm hello, here we go. But small percentage, Frankie. Right, Frankie, I would like to end the show with a bit of fun.
Sounds good.
Okay. So I thought of this, and I haven't prepared this. So I'm going to wing it, and hopefully I'll mention everybody. I'm going to say a player's name, and I want you to say keep or sell. Forget contract status. So if I was to say Bonner, don't be like, oh, but he's out of contract. Forget that. Sell or keep, right? So do you want them here next season or not, right? So I'm going to say a player, and I want you to say keep or sell, okay? Quick.
All good. Quick.
Jared Bowen.
Keep.
Mohamed Kudus.
Keep.
Mikel Antonio.
Sell.
Thomas Souček.
Keep.
Edson Alvarez.
Keep.
Lucas Paqueta.
Sell.
Emerson.
Keep.
Aaron Craswell.
Sell.
Vladimir Sufal.
Sell.
Ben Johnson.
Sell.
Areola.
Keep.
Lucas Fabianski.
Keep.
James Ward-Prowse.
Keep.
Flynn Downs.
Keep.
Danny Ings.
Sell.
Maxwell Cornet.
Sell.
Kurt Zuma.
Oh, the right money he sells. He goes.
Nefa Gerd.
Sell.
Angelo Ogbonna.
Sell.
Konstantinos Mavropanos.
Keep.
And I think that's everybody. Have I missed anyone?
No, I think you're pretty good.
There you go. Off the top of my head, that's the West Ham squad. I've left out the academy player because I know Frankie will say keep to them all, I assume.
Big
George
rebuild
Murphy,
job,
Lewis
mate.
Morford,
Big rebuild job.
Yeah, there's a lot to do for someone. I've probably missed one first team player. I apologise, but I should have been I'll be a bit more prepared next time if I do a quick fire round at the end. But anyway, Frankie, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it as always.
No worries, mate. I'm looking forward to it. Doing more. It'll be fun.
If you guys at home have enjoyed it, please do drop a like on the video as well, because it will encourage A, Frankie to come back, and B, me to continue doing long form podcasts. If you're new around here, please do subscribe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.